Live's Leaf Talk. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Joining me now on Leaf Talk is Aaron William Freeland and our special guest, David Morasuti. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello. How are you doing?
Good. Aaron, first of all, we're going to do Leaf Talk. You've been begging for the last, 6 months or something, begging to talk about the Leafs more. And I kept saying, no, we're not going to do that. Forget it. And yeah, I'm finally relenting. You were right. They made the playoffs.
Well, every once in a while I get things right. It's a rarity, but I'm glad when it happens.
And you know what? They've done it in style. David, let's ask you about the Leafs, and we'll start by saying, go back to the beginning of the season. What's happened that you are not surprised about, and what's happened that you are surprised about?
I'm not surprised. I mean, obviously, I'm not surprised that they're in the playoffs. Obviously, I mean, even though that the disappointment and all those things, I think they proved that they found those incremental improvements that they needed to make and maturity in their game. I think what surprised me the most was, how different this blue line looks from the start of the season till now. It's totally changed. If you look at what the Leafs day one open night roster looks like and what it is now, I did not expect this much change on this blue line, for better or worse. In some cases, injuries played a factor, but just also the trades done have totally remade this blue line.
I think, real quick, the biggest surprise on defense, now that you raised that issue, to me, when you go from the beginning of the season, is Liljegren.
Yes. No, I think you're totally right. I think his emergence, I knew that he could be an NHL defenseman. Whether I expect him to be contributing like he has, I wasn't going there yet because he didn't have the experience. But they finally did the right thing, which was put him with the right defensive partner that can allow him to do the things he needs to do. And he has found confidence in his game. This is a confident young defenseman. That's a dangerous thing to have in a good way. We'll see how it translates to the playoff hockey. It only gets tougher from here. So now he has to. It's another level he has to reach now.
There's lessons to be learned, and the Big Four have shown that they needed to learn some lessons. I mean, Tavares understood a little better than the other guys about playoffs, but he really didn't. He wasn't rich in history of playoffs either. So Liljegren, Aaron, is he the biggest surprise on defense for you?
He has been a welcome revelation. I mean, he's the 23-year-old that looks like a 40-year-old, and he actually has started to play with some of that confidence and some of that swagger that comes with being a longtime vet in this league. But a lot of that is who he's been paired with, and with their deadline pickup of Mark Giordano, at least over the past month and a bit, them playing together has proven him to be a stable and solid presence back there. One of the other surprises was actually a pickup from Phoenix that came over with Bunting, and that was Lyubushkin. Bush has been fantastic for the Leafs. They paired him with Riley, which makes a lot of sense. He's a big body-moving defenseman. He's not as prone to gas as I feared that he would be, which is great. But yeah, the back end has been completely made over. And with Muzzin being a game-time decision on Friday, they may decide to hold him out for one more game, so that brings up a question as to who they're going to pair with Brody. But yeah, this Leafs back end has been absolutely fantastic the past month and a half to 2 months.
Lyubushkin, David.
I mean, when I heard his name, I was really starting to figure out what it was about him that made him so prolific in terms of to go out and get him, right? I thought they killed two birds with one stone in this trade because they got rid of the Nick Ritchie contract, which they needed to. That was just a player that was considered a boat anchor in terms of his fit wasn't right with the team, and his contract was just going to be a hurdle they would always have to overcome. And then you get a guy that they don't have a lot of, right? They don't have a big defenseman that's willing to be a disturber, physical disturber, whether in front of the net, preventing zone entries. He does the things that other defensemen on this team don't do as well.
Especially when one of them is injured. The other one, Jake Muzzin,
Yes.
who, remember, he didn't make it through the playoffs last year, and he didn't make it to the end of this season. He had a lot of injuries, and that quality is without Lyubushkin, it's not there unless Muzzin can get back to his former self.
No, I totally agree that pretty much I was saying that he was the right-handed Jake Muzzin for in terms of like style. I think he's maybe
The other thing you just said is very important, that he's right-handed. He
Yes.
fits the left, right, left, right, left, right. I'm talking about Liljegren and Lyubushkin.
That's why I felt like both players were going to be so vital to what this team was trying to do, because they didn't have, Liljegren being a righty. They have now 3 right-handed defensemen that they feel comfortable playing, although my opinions of Justin Hall are a lot lower versus what a lot of other, even Sheldon Keefe seems to always favor him. But I think what these trades have allowed the Leafs to do is we can have Lyubushkin, we can have Liljegren in the lineup. If we put Jake Muzzin in there, then Justin Hall can be that extra guy, which that's fine with me, because that just shows the depth that this team has. Because look, there is most likely going to be an injury. It's hard to, we knock on wood, it doesn't happen, but it's tough to avoid. The last 2 playoff series, they have lost Jake Muzzin, and both times it has led to them bowing out of the playoffs. So at least this is not going to be a reason why the Leafs don't make it past the first round, I will say.
And it's important. It's important to note that that's not on Jake Muzzin. It was, they didn't have the backup on defense, that they have today. The experience, and we still haven't talked, Aaron, about the defenseman that seemed to be the next man up as far as star stature is concerned. He's been injured. They're hoping he comes back for the playoffs. He might even play in the last game up against Boston. That is another issue where he was a little higher ranked than Liljegren.
Sandin was a little higher ranked. Yeah, coming into this season at least. Certainly his injury issues and what I like to call cranial vapor lock certainly didn't help him at certain points. There were some defensive gaffes that he made earlier in the season that highlighted deficiencies in his game. That allowed Liljegren to get more ice time, and as a result, you have these 2 players fighting it out positionally, which I absolutely love. I think a little bit of healthy competition on the back end for the Leafs will only do good for them. But yeah, I right now Sandin's on the IR. Hopefully he'll be good to go. I don't know if they're going to try to slot him in the last game of the season. That's a risky proposition at best. I think in the position the Leafs are in, they're probably better off to just sit a whole bunch of guys and bring up all the Marlies. But that's just me.
And then what David said's very important. You're not going to go through the playoffs with 6 defensemen. You need to have, and some suggest as many as 9 defensemen. They could go through 9 defensemen. So 8 and 9 are going to be very important as well. So we talked about 7. Sandin right now, I guess, and Hole will at this point are either 7 by what I'm hearing here, and then you still got 8 and 9 yet.
Only ever produced 1 first-round pick. Malik Willis.
Now, the other thing that we're looking at here as well is who else could they potentially bring up from the Marlies should they need somebody?
Sorry, that was my fault. There was an advertisement playing. I had some Leaf news. I
thought it was mine.
That was mine. That was my fault. No, I had Leafs news queued up, and there was an advertisement that just played right on the page.
I thought I had the same thing. I saw it come up. Anyway, it is what it is. It's very important, Aaron. You're right. The Marlies have provided more previously, because I think I'm just saying I think it's always been a revolving door for the forwards, right? Nick Robertson, yada 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 yada. Player plays well, gets picked off, goes to Vancouver. With the defensemen, it takes longer for them to develop. And we saw this in real time with the Maple Leafs over the last couple of years.
No, this is very true, and I mean what we're looking at from the Marlies is unfortunately not as heartening as you might think. You've got Joseph Duszak, who recently got nominated to the AHL first team, which is nice. You have Timu Kivihalme, who's also back there, as well as Christians Rubens. Those are all bigger bodied defensemen. And then on the smaller side, you've also got Mac Hollowell, who's done very well for them this year. But as it currently stands, I'm really not sure who they could potentially bring up.
David, it has more to do with the fact that they've been very successful in bringing up players, and players have really worked well from the Marlies to the Leafs over the last couple of years. And what it says to me is that it's a pipeline now that's a little backed up more than it stopped,
Yeah, like they've seen a lot of these guys graduate over the years, right? And they're trying to restock with this as much as possible. I mean, this was what happens when you trade first round picks, trade as many picks as they've had the last few years, but they've also found ways to get guys through other routes, drafting some of those college guys. Alex Steves being one of those, making those trades for a guy like Joey Anderson, who, has come up once in a blue moon for the Leafs. You're going to have to find ways to add to that pipeline, because with the way that the cap is and with the way that injuries come up, you have to find guys that can come in. I mean, the biggest one, obviously, the one that I was always concerned about was goaltending, right? Because they didn't have a proven guy in the AHL. Well, maybe Eric Schalgren proved that maybe AHL stats at times don't always tell the full story, because he's come in and he's done exactly what the Leafs needed him to do.
And they just signed the Hobey Baker winner for this year. So, I was going to also throw in, I didn't hear Nyes, Matthew Nyes. He's another guy that they need to sign, but it looks like he's going to be in college for another year. But this is a guy that's similar to a guy that just scored 60 goals.
There are some comparisons, yes, in terms of the size. He's got a bit of that, presence to score in front of the net. Does he have the offensive instincts in terms of the shot? I don't know if it's there yet, but I think he made the right decision in going back. And the reason why I say that is because the Leafs, if they bring him up early, they might stunt his development and his potential, because he's going to have to play against professional players, and you have to kind of adapt your game to that. If he continues to hone his craft against players his own age, he can work on his strengths, and then when he comes to the pros, he can use those strengths to their full potential. He hasn't reached his full potential. As you said, he's only 19. He's going to be he's going into, he's not even 20 yet, right? He's not even close to a finished product. And I think that's something Leafs fans need to realize, is you want to see what the finished product is, because that will give you the most value on your return.
I'm going to give you just a little bit pushback, and the pushback is going to be that the Leafs have developed a pretty good reputation for developing players. They have taken, it's very easy to say you draft high and you end up with a star or an NHLer. It's when you can draft in the second round, third round, and these guys show up in the National Hockey League. And even the ones who there are no guarantees. Leaf fans know very well a lot of high draft picks for the Leafs over the years haven't panned out, right, Aaron?
Oh, there's been a boatload of them that haven't actually gone our way. I actually think the Leafs have been more successful in developing players that they've actually managed to scoop off other teams or acquired through trades. They haven't necessarily picked up themselves.
Which is the opposite of way things used to be for a gray-haired guy like me that I remember. The Leafs were always stocking other teams because the players that they had, I don't know, this guy doesn't seem so good, and then they win. Randy Carlyle comes to mind.
Brian Bradley's another player that comes to mind. He was languishing on the Leafs and then led the Tampa Bay Lightning in scoring for 2 seasons. You got to go figure. Here's the other thing. When it comes to goalies, the cupboards aren't exactly bare in the AHL. I mean, we have Carter Hutton, who's a bit of a reclamation project, who's currently on loan to the Chicago Wolves. Hutchinson hasn't performed badly. Joseph Wall hasn't performed badly. Andrew D'Agostini
has been the guy that should be sitting in Schalgren's spot.
Yeah, and if it wasn't for injuries,
Yeah,
You
and
know?
then he gets injured and Shalgren gets a break, right? I mean,
Yeah.
David, that's what hockey's all about. That's what organizations are all about, is that you have to have multiple options. It's not just a linear thing, right?
I remember the Vegas Golden Knights at one point used like 4 or 5 goaltenders in their first season because
Wow.
of injuries. Like they played a guy that hadn't even played a professional game yet because they just had no other option because of injuries, right? You have to. I say you need whatever you think of. If you think a team needs 3 goalies, think you need 4. You need maybe 5.
Half
In,
dozen in some cases.
injuries have just become too prevalent in today's game in terms of wear and tear these guys take, the physicality, the speed, and just and let's not forget that during COVID times the league has been trying to condense the schedule to try to get back to a normal calendar, right? This is still not a normal calendar. We'd be starting the playoffs. We'd be almost a week into the playoffs. I always say, like, what the NBA is at right now is where the NHL feels like they should
Well,
be.
the NHL usually finishes just a hair before the NBA normally, under
Yeah.
normal circumstances.
This year they're behind, right?
Yeah, absolutely, but they're not as behind, and as you guys know, as I expressed throughout the pandemic, that they won't be going to China to play in the Olympics, and they'll end up using that time to basically make up the games that they lost during the pandemic. That was an easy call for me, and thank goodness for that, because we would still be in, like, game 70 right now.
Yeah, I know. We would be in the league would be in a trouble if they had gone to the Olympics. If they did the right thing in prioritizing, getting their season done and over with, and not letting the pandemic totally, you know, push this all the way till the end. Maybe we would have had the playoffs starting near the end of mid-May, end of May, which would have
Absolutely.
been too far away for a lot of fans to go through.
This makes more sense. At the end of the day, they're behind maybe a couple of weeks. That's all they're behind, really, when you think about it. So, it's a better deal, but, considering how the last few years have gone, we got a full season in. There were a couple of hiccups around Christmas, with, you know, Vancouver losing a week, 2 weeks, Montreal losing some time. Eventually, the Leafs lost some time as well. There were no road games for Canadian teams because they couldn't go to the US, and it was really, when you think about it, it was a crazy season, and I think I hope we never see anything like that.
No, we're lucky to have gotten through as much as we have and adapted as well as we have. As it is, yes, there's going to be another short summer for the players. Short turnaround once the Stanley Cup ends at the beginning of August and before training camps begin in September. But at least we're shifting more back towards a regular annual schedule.
Normally, I like to work from goaltender out, but we started with the defense inadvertently. So the defense of the Leafs, and then before we leave the defense, we can't even call it a surprise. I mean, when the Leafs made the trade with Seattle, bringing in the former captain of the Calgary Flames, we knew there was potential there for A, leadership, B, maybe something left in the tank, especially because he was coming to play back home. Let's start with you, David. Been pretty good.
He's been, out of all the pickups the Leafs have done since 2017, I'll say, he's been the far more effective
The
one.
only one, I think.
Really, I mean, like,
Honestly, the only
actually, I think all 3 of them have been way more productive than what the Leafs have gotten. Part of it is health. I think they got guys who were not fully healthy when they grabbed them. I think Nick Foligno last year was not healthy when they traded for him. They got, they're getting production, right? It's production
Absolutely.
too. And it's experience. Giordano brings, you know what? They always say that sometimes experience gets overrated. Not with Mark Giordano. This is a player that's been there. He's done it. Yeah, he hasn't won a cup yet, but he's gone pretty far. He's been on runs. He's gone against teams that have gone far, right? And I think a lot of players have been very receptive to what he brings. I mean, I mentioned Timothy Liljegren. I think I think his presence with Liljegren has been the biggest impact that this Leafs team has needed. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if this is a relationship that continues beyond this season.
I can see it because he's made enough money. He loves working in the community, and he knows this community. I have to say as well, and as I've told both you guys, I believe in leadership. I think leadership is really important. But I'm one of those people that doesn't believe that leadership is good enough in the dressing room or even on the bench. It needs to be on the ice, and that's why Mr. Calgary captain is so awesome for the Maple Leafs. Aaron?
Now, it almost seems like we have a trend of picking up ex-captains.
Well, that's how they draft too. I mean, if you look at the players that they draft captains. That's who they go after. There's something to be said for leadership. There's something to be said for respect. And you know that if a guy's wearing a C, it doesn't matter how bad the team is, at least you know within that team framework he's respected by the coach, by the GM, and the players.
This is very much true. And it's a lot of the times when you are going out and seeking players like that, that's exactly what you're looking for. And you're always talking about drafting the best player available. Usually the best player available tends to be the captain. So,
the best player available, and David, that word that they love to use in sports and especially in hockey, I think, intangibles.
Yeah. This is, I think, in playoff hockey, the intangibles tend to, some people tend to overrate them, but some people tend to underrate them, right? There's an intangible in terms of situational hockey, composure, things like that. Those are intangibles, right? In my opinion, those are the intangibles you need to go on long playoff runs, right? When you're down, as a team that's down, do you have the guys that can say, all right, we're down, but we still have a lot of ways to go. This isn't over yet. Can we push back? The other one is, we're up ahead. Can we put the final nail in the coffin and not give our opponent any reason to think that they're going to get back into this series, which the Leafs have done. The Leafs did last year. They gave Montreal that little sliver of hope. They didn't have the right. I feel like they did. Yeah, the intangibles weren't there. The composure wasn't there. They allowed themselves to almost, I wouldn't say, psych themselves out, but they let things boil over a bit too much.
I'm going to make a prediction right now, Aaron and David. This is my prediction. Okay. There will come a point in the playoffs, maybe in the first series, maybe in game 2, 3, or 4, and you're going to see Mark Giordano skate over to Mitch Marner and put his arm around him and say, hang in there, buddy. And he's going to give him a pep talk because Marner needs that. He needs, he's a guy who is awesome when things are going well. But, he's going to need somebody who can emotionally support him when things aren't going well and remind him. And this is the whole point. And remind him of how good a hockey player he is. One of the weaknesses of Mitchell Marner, and I attribute it to maturity, having not arrived there yet, where he has to take the bad with the good. He doesn't handle the bad that well. And I think that to me, I see Giordano because Giordano's an outward guy. Unfortunately, Tavares isn't that kind of guy. I wish he was. He verbally supports his teammates, but he's not a physical kind of guy. And Giordano, maybe it's my background. Maybe it's the Italian in me where it's, hugs and all that kind of stuff. But I can see Giordano doing that.
I think first and foremost, Tavares' impact is always going to be what he does on the ice. I think you're totally right on that. I think Marner and Matthews definitely need someone that can kind of, whisper in their ear almost. And when things get a little tough, can settle them down a bit, right? I also think, having them come in fresh, they're going to get the last game off in the season. Both Matthews, Marner, and Campbell are not going to play. So they're going to go into this fresh. There's going to be, they've had injury issues, but they have picked things like they have been the best players in the NHL really in the second half of the season.
As a team, they've been pretty good too.
Yeah. I mean, where the Leafs go is where their best players will take them. I firmly believe that. And if you're looking at, in this case with the Leafs, it's Matthews and Marner. It always has been, and it always will be as long as they are the
Up
top
front.
paid players on the team.
Up front.
Yes.
The
Up
thing
front.
we discussed earlier, that now they got some guys in the back end who can do some carrying. And I don't think it's a coincidence, guys. See, we're not leaving the defense here. I'm feeling really terrible. Sorry, guys. But this Leaf defense has become a point producer. You know, they've jumped up the queue. They were like 28th in the league, and now they're in the middle, which isn't bad as far as progress is concerned. Points from the point.
Yeah,
No,
they
and-
weren't getting that at the beginning of the season either, right, Aaron?
No, they were suffering from a pronounced lack of that, and I think one of the things that Liljegren brought to the blue line was the ability to get shots through. Him and Sandin,
even though he's injured.
Yeah.
Even Sandin, yep.
Him and Sandin both had the ability somehow to find the net from the blue line, as opposed to a Cody Ceci special or a Jake Gardner special, which is off the shin guards and back into your own zone. These two guys had actually successfully managed to do that. The other thing I wanted to just touch back on here, for Marner in particular, yeah, he needs somebody to pat him on the back and say, hey, buddy, you're doing okay. You're doing a good job. Have another Mountain Dew. At the same time, you've got a guy like Nylander who needs to be told to smarten up. And it's two different kinds. Nylander's come out and said,
can you believe the latest rant by the fans against Nylander? He moved off his spot during the national anthem, and he was getting strafed, but because of that.
But I mean, okay, whatever. But I mean, Nylander's point
said, told, right, dude, you don't leave the blue line when the national anthem's on. Wait till it's over, dude. But anyway, I digress. Go ahead. So
I mean, he has said before, I need Sheldon to call me out.
Oh, so, and you know what else he said? You want more support? Remember when the reporter said to him, "So wow, you're doing really well. You're scoring goals, and you just scored the most goals you've ever scored." And he goes, "Didn't I do that already?" That speaks to his personality, where he inflates himself in his own mind, and he needs to be brought down to earth.
You know what? He's got beautiful hair, but there are no thoughts behind those eyes.
I think he's smarter than that.
He's got great hockey sense. Don't get me wrong. He's got fantastic hockey sense. Everything else just seems secondary. Do you know what I mean?
I just think he's one of those people that is, he's I don't know. He skates by the beat of his own drummer, I guess.
Yeah, he kind of goes with the flow of the game sometimes, right? He doesn't. We want to see him be the aggressor in a way. We want to see him dictate it rather than kind of play towards what the other team wants him to do at times. He's great at, when he has the puck on his stick, very often he's not letting that thing go. He can get out of the zone very easily. He can transition very smoothly. It's now, can he make the plays like that play he made on the Tavares goal against Detroit? If you saw that, where he did the sprinter, what his ability to do things like that, make other player when him and Tavares were at their best, they were feeding off of each other. They did not. They lost that. They got to get back to it. They both need to figure out a way to smack each other in the butt and say, look, we got to make each other better. And I maybe Tavares is not willing to say it. Maybe that as kind of to point out the fact that maybe Tavares isn't the most vocal guy and doesn't know how to say it. So this is where Sheldon needs to get both of them together, knock their heads together and say, hey, we need you guys to both provide us with that other threat that the other team needs to worry about.
Now, in fairness to Nylander, he was the best Leaf scorer in the playoffs last year. And I think it has to do with his personality that I just joked a little bit about. And I apologize. I wasn't trying to make fun, as joking a little bit, that his self-assuredness, right? His sense of self, is very strong. You need that as well, because the way the team was playing last year, he was the only guy that had his head above water. You know what I'm saying? Like he was going, well, no, I don't play like that. This is how I play. Hold my beer.
Yeah, but I liked what he did against Montreal. We're all looking for him to do the same. Can he finally put it together? After what we saw this season, I still think he can do it. It's just, will that come when the Leafs really need it, or when the Leafs are down, and then, all right, here's Nylander, kind of making himself look good.
Yeah, it's not just us, Aaron. I mean, in the preseason interview before the season starts, remember what he said? What do you plan on doing this year? And Nylander said, I want to dominate. And after the playoffs he had with Montreal, you can understand why he thought he could. And the World Championships that he was at.
No, and he's certainly proved over the course of the years that he can, when he wants to, turn it on and be an absolutely dominant player out there. The problem is sustaining that. And lapses and swoons during the season certainly don't help.
I think what I think another way of putting what I believe is that he's able to handle the pressure. To play the way he did against Montreal in the circumstances, I repeat, that was not a bad feat. Well, let's talk about goaltending. Haven't had a chance to talk about goaltending. Nice surprise is Shalgren. I like the way he plays goal. He's taken some unfair hits from even the people broadcasting the games, talking about why would he pull himself out of there. He was actually hurt. That might be a reason.
Yeah, I think the injuries and mentally, he wasn't there. There was something off, and he needed a reset. I think Shalgren coming in really did this Leafs team a massive favor, because they could tell Campbell, look, we're not going to have to rely on you, because he has never been relied upon as a 1A starter in his career, and they just could not they needed to. I know this is why they brought in
Peter
Mrazek in the first place, to give Campbell the support that he needed. The problem was Mrazek was even more shaky, both with injuries and his play, that it put unnecessary pressure on Campbell, which fortunately he was kind of able to, make it all, he was able to turn his season around. I think that if he's if he is there, he can give the Leafs a chance in this series.
The biggest accomplishment, Aaron, that this organization, MLSC, the Maple Leaf organization, has made to the hopes of the team is they've created an atmosphere where players who play in other places in Canada or in the US, in other NHL teams, they're not afraid anymore to play in Toronto. There were a lot of players who would not come to Toronto because of the pressure. This was a city that constantly had hope, and quickly it turned into bitterness, and that's a hard atmosphere to play with. I play in. That's why I mentioned Mrazek. I think he might have been dwarfed a little bit by the pressure that's here in Toronto, and it is palpable.
Oh no, the standards to which we hold our goaltenders is absolutely astounding. I mean, if you want to look at all of the different goalies that we've had since 2019, just right before the pandemic, we had Calvin Pickard, Curtis McElhinney, Garrett Sparks, Kazimir Kaskisuo, David Riddick, Frederick Anderson, Joseph Wall, Peter Mrazek, Eric Shalgren, Michael Hutchinson, Jack Campbell, Carter Hutton down with the Marlies, Jonas Enroth for a couple of games, Robin Leonard for 5 minutes on the way through. But I mean, like the rotating carousel that we've had of goalies in the past just 3 years has been a little astounding to me. I'm glad that Jack has been able to settle in. He's only played 77 games in 3 years, but even for him, that is a lot of ice time. So,
well, when you look at the experience he had when he came to Toronto, he had Jack experience.
Yeah.
Which is synonymous with the word not much. But you know what? He's really been the soup that you need when you're sick. When he gets his thing together, he really is outstanding. And right now he's playing goal in a way that the Leafs need him to play. And that is not necessarily to be perfect, but to be perfect when it matters, and not allow that goal, that back-breaking goal, and make the big save towards the end of the game that gives his team a chance to win. And he's done that, David, and that's laudable at best.
Yeah, and I thought he played well enough last year for the team to go on a run, and unfortunately, the rest of the roster just wasn't up to snuff with what he did, and he was left out to dry. And I think he just needs to realize, if he plays sound, if he gives this team a chance, they will give him a chance finally.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I see good things in the future for him. And Aaron, goaltending is, as you know, as a goaltender who knows it's hard to play goal and how important it is to keep the guys in front of you smiling. Goaltending matters.
It most definitely does. And, it's something that as Maple Leafs fans, I think we've started to never take for granted because it can disappear all too quickly.
Absolutely. After a quick start, John Tavares was the best Maple Leaf in the early going, if we all can remember. I don't have to look at the statistics. It's burned into my brain. And while he was playing well, the other three weren't. And after that, we saw improvement. We talked about Marner's improvement. And what can you say about a guy who scores 50 goals in 50 games, 60 over a season, obviously doing well. And Nylander, 30 plus goals. I mean, that's nothing to shake his stick at. But the one that gets me the most is I think, not the best trade, but the best pickup for the Toronto Maple Leafs this year, gentlemen, has to be Bunning in the offseason I'm referring to.
He's my wild card for the playoffs. If he's healthy, if he's good to go, he will thrive in this type of setup here in the playoffs. He will thrive in this type of hockey.
And Kampf and Kase were close second, probably tied for second. I'd give Kampf the nod because of his health, having a little more than Kase.
Yeah, those two were absolute dynamite together. And I mean, they've played together for decades. They've been friends through it all. When you put those two guys together on the Maple Leafs, they were absolutely fantastic. The unfortunate thing is Kasha's unfortunately a little head injury prone. So that's currently what has him out on long term. Hopefully he'll be able to come back because I really would like to see him have an opportunity to play with Kampf again. Bunting, as you know, day to day, I don't think he's going to be playing on the Friday either, but I think you're right, David. If he comes back, playoff hockey is where he's going to absolutely shine.
Yeah, it should be really good. And if we were to have a quick vote here, and we probably can say it at the same time. Are you ready? We're going to say it at the same time. Most improved, not only Maple Leaf, but most improved player in the National Hockey League. 1, 2, 3. Mikheyev. No?
Yeah.
Cobra. Yes, sir.
He used to be Soup, but then Soup came.
No, I can't argue against that.
He's the fastest skater in a straight line, I think. Him and Pierre Engvall. So it's one of those things where he's actually started to develop a little bit of an edge to his play now too. In the most recent set of games, he's thrown knuckles. So it's quite amusing to see.
Well, and the last fight he was in was for a clean check. I don't know. Was that a dirty check? I don't know. Did I miss something?
Might have been a little bit of this going on.
I guess because he's Tavares' buddy.
It's possible.
Oakville buddy. What can you say? So, David, I know. Have you got time to hang around, or do you got to go?
I unfortunately have to leave you guys, but this was fun as usual.
It was our pleasure. A final comment on the Maple Leafs going into the playoffs. What will it look like for them to win the series for them, and what will it look like if they don't?
They don't win if their best players don't play like their best players. If Matthews and Marner do not have the performance that we've seen in the regular season, they won't go far. What will make them win is if if the Matthews and Marner are effective and they got contributions from other places like they have all season. This is a team that has the depth and all the right pieces to go on a run.
David Morisuti, CFL Talk, Mondays. Maybe this week it'll be on Tuesday. The Leafs are playing on Monday, and David doesn't want to miss it.
Can't miss it, unfortunately. Sorry. Even for the CFL, I can't miss it.
Thanks, David. Glad to see you here. Really appreciate you joining us. Well, Aaron, we'll save that question for you and for I towards the end of the show. We can take a little break if you want. And there were some topics, some subjects you wanted to talk about, and I'm looking for them. Here they are. Okay, let's go. Getting up to speed with what's been going on in the National Hockey. We'll go with the NHL and the Canucks, Kings and Canucks.
So this is coming down to the short strokes here for the Canucks. Los Angeles currently in third in the Pacific at 44, 27, and 10 are coming in to play Vancouver. Los Angeles is currently on a 5-game winning streak. They're looking to extend to 6. Now, the Canucks themselves are 12-6-6 against Pacific teams. They're currently 8th in the Western Conference with 31.9 shots per game and 3 goals a game. Their last meeting was December 30th. LA won that 2-1, but they're looking to try to turn that around. JT Miller is 3 points away from 100. Elias Pettersson has 17 points over his last 10 games for Vancouver. He's looking to extend that as well. I mean, it's going to be difficult. They're in tough. Tanner Pearson is out. Bo Horvat is out. Yaroslav Halak is out, all for the Vancouver Canucks. But the Kings are coming into this one, wonder of wonders, healthy for a change.
And the Kings will also be talking to the Oilers, having a little bit of a conversation.
Yes. This is actually going to be interesting because it's 2 teams that were united by Wayne Gretzky. And the Oilers basically have to win this game. I don't think they really have a choice in it.
We'll see how it turns out.
Well, yeah. I mean, it seems like a fairly favorable draw for the Oilers at this point. But it's the Oilers have a 5-2 series season edge over the Kings, but they want to make sure that they keep them. Keep them underneath their boot.
Jets out of the playoffs, win 4-0 against the Flyers.
It was unfortunate. I didn't want to see it end like this for the Jets, but just late season stumbles and inability to get it together at the right time. I mean, Eric Comrie had a fantastic game. He made 35 saves in the shutout victory, but unfortunately, at the end of the day, it doesn't really help them get where they want to be. So,
Rangers are in a little slumpy-doo, and helping them extend their slump, the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah, it seems for some odd reason, the New York Rangers have become the team that are good for what ails you. Going into last night's game, the Canadiens were 1-9. They lost 9 in a row. So for them being able to hang a 4-3 loss on the Rangers to snap their streak is a good thing. Petry got his 6th of the season with 31 seconds left to put Montreal ahead for the 4th time. And that gave Martin St. Louis finally a chance to get a win over his old team. So
we talked about the Leafs and how improved they are, and we'll continue to talk to them at the end of the show. Jack Campbell, his improved play, we discussed that. And, of course, they signed Dryden Mckay. What do you think of this guy? He's the Hobey Baker winner. He's in a bit of a suspension. He did a no-no, but he'll be able to start the season in Toronto with the Marlies.
Yeah, the suspension in and of itself, I'm glad that the NCAA took a little bit of a closer look at it. He was seeing a naturopath concerning his supplements and vitamins and what have you, and they directed him to take a certain vitamin supplement, which he declared before his U.S. Olympic testing, because it was supposed to help bolster his immune system to protect against COVID-19.
Recovery and help in recovery.
Yeah. And what basically happened is it twigged the doping censors that, they said, hey, that's not supposed to be there. He was as shocked as anyone could be because he wasn't aware that it was going to be an issue.
And it was the only thing he took.
Yeah. And it's not like it was deliberate. It wasn't performance enhancing or anything like that. It just happened to contain an ingredient that was on the banned substances list. So instead of banning him for 3 years, he got a suspension until basically next season.
And how he got off, this should be mentioned as well, is that he brought a sealed bottle of that same supplement, and they opened it and tested it, and it had the same thing in it. It was contaminated, just like the bottle he said must have been that he took. So, he proved, which is crazy and not fair to have to prove you're innocent of something, but he accomplished that. That's one heck of a feat, to prove you're innocent of something. That's not an easy thing to do. You want to talk about the Leaf line rushes?
We can certainly take a look through those. And again, bear in mind, these are from practice this morning, so it's more
this
than
is
likely
not about
they're
the
going to
playoffs.
change.
We started with the hot stuff earlier. We talked about the hot takes. So this is just for fun. They're going to be playing the Bruins, and they're going to be laughing at the Bruins because they finished ahead of them and all that kind of stuff.
Now, this obviously isn't going to be the lineup when they actually go to play the Bruins, because I'm showing Marner, Matthews, Tavares, Nylander all listed as playing.
No, they're not going to.
No. But the way that they could possibly reconstruct it would be Kerfoot, Mikheyev, and Robertson, and then you've got Kampf, Engel, Abruzzese, Blackwell, and Spezza. Now, I'm
And
not sure how
Robertson
they're going
will
to
be
tweak.
in there too.
Yep.
You
No,
can
more than likely he will be, just to get him some ice time, get him some rotations. And again, this gets to the point where you wonder if they bring up Clune for a final game with the Maple Leafs, but I think he signed a one-way, so he wouldn't be eligible.
Oh, that's not good for him.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's happy with the role that he's currently playing, I believe,
Yep.
with the Marlies, which is
Well, he signed a one-way contract.
yeah,
it's true.
So.
But they wanted him for leadership quality, right? And he brought it to them. I think they're pretty satisfied with that. And what you're inferring is that they want to reward him, but they can't.
Yeah. So it'd be something for them to examine, maybe tweaking his contract or even potentially signing him to a PTO. But we'll have to see what happens. After all, it is going to be tomorrow, so time is short for that sort of thing.
Major League Baseballs, the major leagues have fooled with baseballs to the point where pitchers get no grip, and the ball. We're almost in the dead, a dead era here with the baseball, where you get guys who are they believe they hit the ball squarely, and it goes center field, and it just dies. And it becomes a lot of players who should be hitting home runs are they're hitting warning track power. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And it's something that now the Mets complained.
They should. What is seven players have been hit in one series?
Yeah, and in the past 20 games, they've had 19 players hit by pitches. A lot of people like to say that teams complain just for the sake of complaining. But when you play 20 games and you're averaging about a player a game getting plunked, then that seems to indicate that either all of the pitchers in Major League Baseball are bad, or something needs to happen with the baseballs. So,
or the Mets just aren't liked.
Well, I mean, there's that possibility
that too, right?
But they got rid of Marcus Stroman, so that helps.
Well, listen, I hope they straighten things out. The Blue Jays have been incredible. They're off to a fantastic start, a great start. The fans are really happy. The experts are calling them a favorite to win the World Series this early in the season. We know what that's worth. That's not worth very much. There is, teams do not stop building because the season started. So there's a lot of activity that can go on, and they're in a division with the Boston Red Sox and the New York Yankees. And those are two teams that, if money will straighten things out, they got it to spend.
No, it's true. And they're currently sitting at 13-7. Half a game behind the New York Yankees, so that's something as well. Springer has been an absolute revelation. He's been fun to watch. He looks like he's settled in nicely when healthy. Yeah, Chapman has been wonderful as well. Vladdy has been playing consistently. The one issue I think that Gausman's been fantastic. The one issue that I think we may run across is Bichette at this point.
He finally got a little bit of a break hit wise. This is the problem, right? Whether you want to call it the sophomore jinx, even though isn't his sophomore season, there is, it's not a question of being talented and having ability, and it carries you through your career. You have to keep changing. You have to keep adapting. You have to keep understanding what teams are doing to minimize your strength. And then you've got to figure out how to maximize your potential and find new strengths to keep, it's whack-a-mole. Being an athlete is whack-a-mole. I mean, the more your head pops up, the more somebody tries bringing it down. So you got to find a new place to come up. That's just the way it is.
And honestly, Bo showed some improvement defensively last year when they started putting him on a timer. He seems to have been rushing some throws and missing, which is obviously a concern that needs to be addressed. I don't know if they need to put him back on a timer again or if he can solve it himself. I know he places a lot of pressure on himself to correct himself.
Well, it's tough too because, keep in mind, he's part of a group of young players that came up together and have been given, they've been named the future superstars of the Toronto Blue Jays. It's a hard thing to live up to. It truly is. And I hope this kid figures it out. And I hope, you know, at the very least, he has a productive major league career, and hopefully he, you know, he's able to be helped by the team to figure, you know, what it takes to be a major league baseball player.
No, there's a lot of weight that are being put on these guys, and they're still very young, so it could potentially be very damaging. But the good thing is, he is currently at a point in his career where if there are habits that need to change, that can be done easily enough. You know, they haven't become ingrained yet, so there is still a huge opportunity for him here and a great future for him.
Okay, we got a couple of minutes left, 5 to be exact, maybe 4.5. I promised that you'd get a chance to talk about the playoffs and the Leafs. But before we do that, we didn't talk about Matthews specifically. 60 goals in a season. Now, in context, it has been one of the best scoring seasons since the 90s in the National Hockey League. But he is one of the guys that's adding a lot of goals to the goals being scored. And this Leaf team is a giant contributor as well.
You know, to see him and to see how absolutely effortless it was to watch him get his second and third goals of a hat trick about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. It's automatic for him. You know,
As was that 60th goal. It was everybody knew that was coming.
Oh yeah, as soon as he circled across the blue line and kept the puck in, you knew it was going in. It was just a question of when and if you would be able to see it. So
we did barely.
Yeah,
in slow motion. We did barely in slow motion. Yeah, he you know, I always said that he had the talent, and I always felt, and I still feel, that players need to respect their defensive game. And this kid has done that. You know, he has really worked on the 200-foot game, Aaron. You can be nothing but happy with that part of his game.
Oh, most assuredly. I mean, he's taken huge leaps and strides since he actually started playing with the Leafs, and you know, people started to notice some of his deficiencies. But every year he takes a good chunk of the summer and just goes hard at one aspect of his game. 2 summers ago, I think it was his backhand. Last summer, I believe it was his back checking and his straight line skating in order to get back for that sort of thing. So every year you're going to see him just hone in on one idea and go hard on that. And it's important as a player so that you don't stagnate.
I think, you know, he's also working this season. One of the biggest things I noticed is that he has a sense of humor. That's for sure. I think his off-season vocation, I think he should be into dental surgery. First of all, he showed that he could handle some dental surgery on himself using a net.
You know what? I've always said, if you stay out of the blue paint, bad things won't happen. How did that happen? He was in the blue paint.
And then, of course, he decided to offer some dental surgery to a certain Buffalo player.
Well, he served his time for that.
He sure did. And you know, his game improved after that. And it was, we agreed, you and I agreed, and the experts said that, you know, he needed to show, right, that he needed to be respected, and he was going to do something. So give me your early preview of the Maple Leafs, what looks like a winner and what will look like they're not.
Well, as we head down to the final buzzer here, I do want to say that it looks like we are definitely going to be playing Tampa Bay in the first round. I, for one, am looking very much forward to that. What I'm looking more forward to is potentially not facing Boston in the second round. So we're going to need to get through that first.
I don't think Boston will take Florida out, but they might. They might. Depends how good the referees are. It's gonna be something that we love picking on Boston when it comes to the referees. For the Leafs to win, I have to agree with David. Their stars have to be the stars, and they're going to need not excellent but good goaltending from in their net, and hopefully that'll be provided by Campbell. And we're going to see how important that Leaf defense is. You know, the offense, if it's stifled, and the defense, you know, we talked about a few players on their defense that they can do some stuff and they can cause some pain to opposition, buy some time for the forwards to get their thing together, and the Leafs could win. But if they lose, it'll be because their best players didn't play their best and the goaltending wasn't what they'd hoped it'd be. And here's hoping that they have a successful playoff for you and all the rest of the Leaf fans.
Looking forward to seeing how it plays out, Frank.
Me too. Well, for Aaron William Freeland and, of course, David Morisuti, who left a little bit earlier, I'm Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching Candid Frank Live's Leaf Talk, seen live Fridays at 6 p.m. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Leaf Talk, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Enjoy the hockey this week.